Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well. And Doug, we got a thorny problem to solve this afternoon, as well as a few other odds and ends of plant life. What do you want to title the show, Doug?
Well, we'll talk about thorns and thistles.
Thorns and thistles, yeah.
And of course, those are something that came along as part of the curse.
Right.
But one of the things I've been wondering about, and I'm going to be demonstrating a few things here.
He loves this, folks. I got to tell you.
I brought my goodie box with me.
He's got his goodie box. This is a lot of fun, though.
But what I've got here is a couple of interesting things that we're going to do as a show and tell. I'll show you one of the things I got in my goodie box here, Rich.
Oh, what do you got, Doug? Let's see what you have.
I've got an Allosaurus finger.
Oh, an Allosaurus claw there? Yeah, okay. That's a replica, though, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
If it wasn't a replica, it would be worth quite a bit of money.
They do an amazing job with these replicas, though. I tell you, Doug, it's really. I know I've got a raptor claw and a T-Rex. I think T-Rex claw. I might have one of those. Yeah, I think it's from the same company. Anyway, so why'd you bring that along?
Well, it was in the box with the filaree seeds.
Okay, so nothing related to the show directly, although we do talk about dinosaurs a lot. But instead of thorns and thistles, that's sort of the animal thorn, the claws,
right,
I guess.
yeah.
But anyway, Doug, I think the point of it is the thorns and thistles, that was part of the curse. And kind of a side note, there's an article Doug gave me earlier today, and I read through it. It's kind of neat. A lot of it was about all the different kinds of thorns and the difference between a thorn and an actual thorn and a thistle. I'm trying to think. There's different thorns. There's slightly. One's a leaf that's been solidified, an actual leaf, and one of them is an outgrowth out of the plant fiber or something like that. Yeah. So they're different. It's kind of like, I guess, in the animal kingdom, there's an antler and a horn.
Yeah.
It kind of I was thinking of a corollary that might work. But anyway, what I was thinking about, Doug, with thorns and thistles is interesting. It's part of the curse. And a lot of things, the Bible in the Old Testament is very literal, straightforward, but there's all kinds of symbolism that's underlying it. It's like things that are sort of hidden in the Old Testament become explicit in the New Testament, and things in the New Testament, it really is there to explain what's kind of hidden in the Old Testament. One of those things is when we were made, according to Genesis, we were made out of the dust of the earth. Mm-hmm. And at the curse, it says from dust, from the earth you were made, from the earth you're going to return. You're from dust to dust, ashes to ashes. That's why the whole thing comes from. You're going to return to the dust. It's interesting that also along with that, a lot of people say, well, the curse only affected humans. Well, the first curse was spiritual. I go, no, we're going to physically die because of it, even though we did spiritually die.
And the whole creation groans.
And all creation groans and is subject to futility. In the context of that in the New Testament is physical death.
That's
okay?
right. Yeah.
Not only that, it wasn't just the humankind, it was all of creation, as you said. And all of creation, the thorns and thistles are part of the thing. The animal, the beasts of the field people were cursed to crawl on their belly like the serpent was. And the beasts were cursed. Animals, plants, everything was all subjected to futility. And a lot of that turned out. We talked a little bit about genetic manipulation, things like that. But the thing I wanted to get to before all that is, it's interesting because Christ himself came in the form of sinful flesh. Mm-hmm. In other words, symbolically, the cursed physical earth. Interestingly enough, Doug, when he was hanging on the cross, what's one of the things that they put on it? What they put on his head?
A crown of thorns.
A crown of thorns. Very, very. I don't think there's any accident here. This was to represent that out of the cursed ground, and Jesus himself said, unless a kernel of wheat goes in the ground and dies, you can't have life coming out of it. So we were physically, the first Adam died because he rebelled, but the last Adam, Christ, came to undo it. He took the thorns on himself, he took the sinful earth on himself, became a mortal body, died, and then conquered death.
That's right.
This is very cool. So all this other cool stuff we're going to talk about is neat, but there's a whole overarching idea of redemption in Scripture. Even though there was a curse and we're still under that, there was a redemptive act that luckily we're 2,000 years past it. We haven't fully seen the full consummation of that redemption. That is physical eternity, physical everlasting life. But spiritually, we've been able to be resurrected now. So, Doug, with any further ado, let's get into some of the fun stuff you wanted to talk about, and the thorns and thistles. Why did you want to talk about the thorns and thistles?
Well, one of the things that I puzzled over was why is it that the things that are so most outwardly demonstratable as being something that's designed by God are weeds. And
Yeah.
you got the burrs and the
Thistles, the thorns, the weeds, the dandelions, yep.
What I've got here is the filaree seed, which is a weed that's sort of a desert plant.
Right.
And the other thing that I have is these wild oat seeds. And
Sowing wild oats?
Sowing wild oats.
Okay.
And now I was showing this to some people at church one time and doing my wild oat seed demo, and they're saying, well, you know what these are. These are weeds. If we have them in our, they compete with our crops, and
Well, Doug,
they're kind of a mess.
They are weeds, but don't you think it was, I think, again, back to what I was talking about earlier, some of the types and shadows in Genesis. It's interesting, Doug, the things that thrive in this broken world are plants that we don't like.
Right.
Weeds. I think oftentimes, Doug, in our human world, the people that seem to survive and thrive in this world, oftentimes are not people who are righteous people. So like people say, why do the bad people get away with it? Because they understand how to thrive in a broken world. But that isn't the way it's always going to be.
Right.
They are the weeds of this life in a lot of respect. Yeah, you may think it's great. You're all wealthy and rich, and you've stepped on this person and gossiped about that person, killed that person, slandered this. Whatever you did, and you're selfish and greedy and all these kinds of things the Bible condemns, basically makes you a weed. The reality is, Doug, we're all in one sense weeds unless God cultivates us and makes something good out of us, okay?
And that was my point I was trying to make, is that who knows if we take and scientifically analyze these things, what good you might
Could
be
there
able
be some
to get out
redemptive
of it.
acts in
Yes.
these weeds? Yeah.
Yeah, there may be a reason why God put such a big design in the filaree seed, and we're going to show a little bit of that in
Well,
a
Doug,
few
I will
minutes.
tell you this. One of the weeds I mentioned, dandelions. We have figured out how to do a lot. There's everything, dandelion wine and greens, and you can eat. You can use almost anything in the dandelion. You
Yeah,
know,
the dandelion is pretty
amazing. Yeah, that's a weed.
Yeah, but the reason why it's such a prevalent plant is because of the way it propagates.
Right.
You have a little puffball that just spreads all the little parachutes into the wind, and they waft off into the neighbor's yard. And
Every kid instinctively loves dandelions.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
We love them, man. We love putting a little butter on your arms, and
butter.
oh yeah, and just pop them off, and when they turn into puffballs, you love going and see them go like a snow. Of course, adults hate it because they want to go trying to get them out of their garden or out of their lawn. But anyway, Doug, did you want to? Are we getting ready to show anything or not?
Okay, I think what we'll do here is a little bit of an experiment.
Okay.
What I have here is a filaree seed.
Okay, so we're gonna get a little close up here. So why don't you get the camera over here, and we're gonna get this on this filaree seed. Do you want to pour some water in here?
What I'm going to actually do
Put it on the white paper? Okay, we're going to demonstrate a little bit the filaree seed here. You put it right above the cup there, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to have you pour a little water.
Just right on top of it? Okay.
Yeah. Now, if you take a look at these seeds over here, these are the things that we're going to have a little fun today to show a little bit of interesting behavior that's based upon God's design. Now the filaree seed, that is what this is, these come off from. They're a plant. It's called Urodium circuitarium. And from the Wikipedia encyclopedia that tells a little bit about this plant, which is really a very nice little plant. I actually had called it a weed, but from what I understand is that it's actually quite edible. It's something that is, it tastes like, I think the entire plant is edible, and it has a flavor similar to sharp parsley if it's picked young. And so the Zuni people use these the chewed root. It applies to sores and rashes, and infusion of the root is taken for stomach ache. But the most unusual part of this seed is its shape. It's in the shape of a Fibronacci spiral. A lot of the things that you find in the Bible is based upon this Fibronacci spiral shape. Now we're going to do an experiment with this by putting it in water. And one of the things, when it gets wet and it dries out, gets wet and dries out, the spring will open up, and it will allow it to bury itself into the ground with this. It helps to propagate the seed. So I'm going to take this particular one right here. I'm going to put it in the water and let it sit there for a little while. And we're going to come back to this seed and see how much it unwinds in maybe about 10 or 15 minutes. So let me let it soak here, and you'll watch it. And I'll take it out in a little while, and we'll watch it curl back up. Okay, I think you can see that our filaree seed is now all stretched out. Now let's go pick it out of the water and put it on the table to dry. And you notice that it's all stretched out there now, and we might be able to see it as it dries out a little bit. It's going to curl back up and move. It's a pretty amazing little plant there. Yeah, I think it is starting to curl up a little bit more, and as you can see it in relationship to the other filaree seeds, it is starting to move a little bit. Now, as you can see, it came back about 5 minutes later and it rolled over. So it's winding back up. What we got here is a demonstration of the wild oat seeds. Now you notice on these seeds they have these little feeler things sticking out. And sort of like the filaree seed, there is a locomotion that takes place as a result of the wild oat seeds little feelers rotating. And so we're going to demonstrate how that happens with putting it on a hot plate, and the heat causes the wild oat seeds to move. So we'll do that right now. I'm going to start putting the wild oat seeds on the plate. So let's watch to see if there's any movement that takes place as a result of the heat that's being generated by the candle underneath. And we already have one of the wild oat seeds moving there. I think we're having several of them move. You can see there they are starting to move, and let's get in a little bit closer here and watch what happens. already seen some movement, so we've already got the wild oat seeds starting to turn over. These seeds seem to be quite a bit more active than the filaree seeds were. Took a while for the filaree seeds to react. But good, there we go. We got quite a few, quite a bit of movement going on as a result of the rotation of those little feelers.
Gonna move anymore, Doug? Oh, there one popped or moved. There we go. There's another one.
Yeah, they're
they're getting lively now.
anyway. I think that's probably enough for our own demo here. And now we can pull this guy out.
All right.
Okay, then that's hot.
I know.
So maybe you can put it over here in the fireplace.
There we go. All right. Watch them start moving now when they get hot here.
No doubt, yeah. So I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, he's totally open now.
Let's take a look at the filaree seed and see if we can let him dry out a little bit. You notice that he's stretched out now, and as he dries out a little bit, it's going to start moving. And what you can do with these things is you can get a piece of bread and watch them screw themselves into a piece of bread.
Piece of bread? Oh yeah, we should have
you
thought of that. That'd have been kind of cool. So when it dries up, it gets so they can get dormant, but when they get in the ground, then they'll basically propagate, right?
Right. Yeah.
What kind of a plant do they turn into?
Well, it's a flowering plant. It maybe stands about this tall.
Okay.
And these seeds actually grow in kind of like a little ball, you know.
Okay.
And they'll, like I said, they come together in a 5-star pattern. And then when the seeds are ripe, they spring off and they get propagated. Now, one thing I think is very interesting about seeds and weeds and things like that is that these things will lay dormant in the ground for years.
Okay.
And it was, I just saw that in Death Valley, there's a sort of like a big thing going on in Death Valley right now where they've gotten a lot of rain in Southern California.
Okay,
And
including Death Valley?
Death Valley.
Really? Okay.
And Death Valley is going through a super bloom where
Oh yeah.
these seeds that have been laying dormant for years and years and years are now just coming alive and sprouting throughout the valley. And so, you know, this is one thing that we can see is that there's a lot of design in nature. All we have to do, you know, I'd like to have an evolutionist come and do an experiment where they put together some chemicals.
Yeah.
Then put them in a little pill and then bury it in the ground and see if it comes to life.
Well, it's interesting because, Doug, this did not germinate yet, so it goes back to its dormant position until it gets into a
Right.
place where it can actually grow. So this seed is, till it actually turns into a new plant, can stay like this for virtually forever, you know, or for a long time.
And if you watch this, it's going to curl back up.
It's already started to do it. I can see it.
You can sort of watch it. It's kind of an interesting little.
Do these grow in the desert? These plants, or
Yeah,
not?
they do. Yeah.
Because I saw a thing with the living desert on it. It's an old Disney thing, and they were showing it on Turner Classic movie station or whatever. And they're showing some Disney things, and they had the living dead, and it was a filaree seed. I recognize that seed, and they did time-lapse photography.
Yeah.
And they could see it go into the ground. It was very fascinating to see it move. Yeah, it really was. So are the wild oats, they also desert plant or not?
Well, I think you can find wild oats quite
Okay.
a few different
But they're not
places.
able to be turned into like oat bread or oatmeal or anything like that, are they? Or do you know?
Well, that's the question I'm trying to answer, is what kind of use did the creator intend for this?
Okay, go for it. Do you have any thoughts, or do you?
Yeah, what I would say is we would need to actually analyze the chemical structure of these plants, find out what the kind of protein they make, and see if they're actually something that could be edible. Are they poisonous? Are they useful? Or?
And you know, Doug, we've talked about things like this in the animal, in the natural world, that because of the fall, Doug, and the answer is it adaptation? Is it elimination? Is it modification of the original genomic information? Okay,
Right.
And that's always a fascinating subject to me, Doug.
And
because
there is a lot of good evidence that the evolutionists are talking about. I mean, the creationists are talking about that. There is something called epigenetics, which is there's little things on the ends of the genes. I think they're just like methyl groups or something like that, which by adding them or subtracting them, they could produce these genetic changes. And so it's not necessarily a mutation of sort. It's an adaptation that's
already built in.
Already built in.
So have they been doing some experiments along this line, and do you know what kind of things they found out? I mean, that's fascinating to me.
Right. An example of that would be where we get used to altitudes. We can, if you go in the heights of the Andes or something like that,
Right.
and you live, and when you go there, you get short of breath.
Oh, yeah.
And I can, when I went to the Grand Canyon, I sort of got short of breath too, because it's at 8,000 feet. After a while, you get used to it, and what's the reason you get used to it is because of epigenetics.
Is that right?
And it's because the
Even
body,
in that short of a period of time, the body begins to adapt?
That's right. It's it's the variable thing, and antibodies are doing a similar thing as well. What they do, what an antibody does, is it figures out what the genetic code is for the invader into your body.
Okay.
And it then puts together a protein that is its exact counterpart, so it will glom onto it and then spirit it out of the body.
It fits it and booze it. Okay, wow.
And so that is definitely a design in nature. This, as you can see, our filaree seed is starting to curl back up, and by means of this, it will
Start to curl, but by the end it'll be back tightly wound again. Yeah. Okay.
And so this is fun. I like playing with these things.
Well, Doug, let me talk about this. That are thorns and thistles a modification or an epigenetic thing, or could it be both, or neither, or what?
Well, I think that you have the initial. You have a genetic thing as a foundation.
Right.
But I think what it is an adaptation where the original design was modified to handle a certain environment. Our filaree seed just moved there.
Yeah, and so that brings up another thing, Doug. It's like the idea that environment can turn on or turn off certain things in the epigenetic. Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's the other way around.
It's the other
It's turning it on in response to the environment.
Well, that's what I said. I said maybe turn it on or turn it off,
Yeah.
but it only turns it on. Okay, I didn't know if it would modify and eliminate something or make something go dormant or something like that. I'm just not that familiar. I've heard the term. But,
Yeah, it would turn it on and turn it off.
That's what I was saying. Okay. So,
Yeah.
and so the environment, it's interesting because then it looks like some evolutionary change, but it's really something that's already been built in, and there's certain things at the end
there's
of the-
nothing new under the sun. It's something that's already designed by God. If you have an engineering design that
Right.
does this, you would say it's a marvel. But in this case, we don't want to not acknowledge the creator, and so
Yeah,
you
well-
try to invent some sort of explanation for it that, and they mistake the genetic modifications to adapt to the environment as evolution. And what it really is something that God designed and made. He had a purpose for it.
Well, it's kind of obvious it's already in the genome, you know. So I mean, it's fascinating. Doug, oh, there it moved again. Just saw it moved again, Doug.
Yeah.
It's getting tightly wound. It's I don't know if you can see it from back there or not yet, but it's actually getting quite spiraling.
Well, if you take a look at it here, it wound up.
It's wound up, yeah, but I don't know if you can see it, Doug, because the background, it's better on the white background there to see
Yeah.
it. But anyway, let me get this out of here because we're getting short on time. We're almost out. But they can see it's kind of curled up again, almost not to where it was, but close. So,
Well, I hope you enjoyed our little experiment here tonight. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.